All right.
Hey, vinyl community. Hope you are all doing well. As you can see, I am joined today by my good friend, Matt Phillips. He is in New Brunswick, Canada. Matt and I have done some videos before that were Beach Boys related. But today we are going to be celebrating the 50th anniversary of the Doors L.A. Woman album. We're going to be showing our collections, and then we are going to be ranking the songs on the album. So welcome, Matt.
Hey, thanks for having me again, Jeff.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Matt, when was the first time you heard LA Woman? Were you a Doors fan, or kind of how did that all come to be?
Well, Jeff, I get into the Doors in high school, probably like a lot of people. It wasn't one of their albums that got me into them, not at least not one of their studio albums. I don't know if you remember in 1991, that was the year that I graduated from high school, but they put out this really cool, I think it was 2 cassette collection. It was called In Concert by the Doors. I think I have that on CD here somewhere. This is the CD version.
Yep.
And this basically collected 3 of their existing live albums. And I think it had a few other cuts that they kind of dug out from the vaults. There's like a special version of The End on there. But that's kind of my introduction. A friend had that album and I got really into it in 1991 and I was completely hooked from then on.
Now, was that right around the time the Oliver Stone movie came out?
Yeah, that's right. Let me see. I do have that one as well. I have the Blu-ray version of that. There's what's the actor's name again?
Val Kilmer?
Yeah, Val Kilmer. Yeah, I thought he did an excellent Jim Morrison. I mean, he's like a method actor anyway, so he kind of really threw himself into the part. So
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, you know, Oliver Stone had just come off the success of the JFK movie, and then moved right into the Doors. And I think the Doors was a project that had been in, it was actually in production, I think, until, I think since like the book, No One Here Gets Out Alive by Danny Sugarman. I think that's sort of like they'd been wanting to make a movie of that book for a while. And then it wasn't until, you know, the late 80s, early 90s that Oliver Stone finally came along and put it into production, and we had that movie. But yeah, I think Val Kilmer did a great job. I know there was some controversy because Ray Manzarek disagreed with the portrayal of Jim Morrison as kind of this party animal who was reckless and out of control. And, you know, he said that's not the Jim Morrison I knew. A lot of it was exaggerated. And so I think that kind of caused a rift between him and actually Robbie Krieger, you know, and John Densmore, because they were both, you know, kind of or I don't know what you guys want to say, contributors or consultants on the movie. And so anyway, but yeah, that's kind of when I started to get heavily into the Doors. My dad had the LA Woman album growing up, and he used to play Riders on the Storm and LA Woman. And Love Her Madly, I think those were the only tracks I ever heard him play off the record, but I was familiar with that album before I ever actually started liking the Doors. But then, you know, once I got into the Doors, it was like total immersion. I bought everything by them, and, you know, I've been a fan ever since. So that was right around, you know, what, 1990, I think, when that Doors movie came out.
yeah,
So
awesome.
cool. So what do you have by way of LA Woman physical formats?
Oh, okay. Well, I have a reissue of the vinyl. I think this is a, yeah, as Tim would show you, this is a Canadian pressing with the maple leaf up in the corner. And I know it's a reissue right away because it has, includes the hit single Love Her Madly up in the top corner. So
Okay.
it has like a standard kind of Electra logo. I've got the, I guess I didn't realize there's quite a few fans who don't like this version on CD. This is like a 2006 reissue. Apparently they've added some stuff to it. And like one of the songs, Cars Hiss By My Window, apparently they added a little bit of extra verses or something. I was just reading about that this morning, so.
Oh, okay. Is that that must be the new mix, because I forget what year it was. 2010 or something like that. They actually did new mixes of all the Doors albums. And that is actually, if you're still interested in hearing those, you can purchase them all together on this collection there. so just keep in mind, these are not the original mixes in this box set. They did the remixes where, like you say, they added some verses, they added some instrumentation that was missing from the original mixes. And I know
Yep.
people hate them. Some people like me really appreciate them.
Yeah. The only other version that I have again on CD is the 40th anniversary. This is like more of a digipack kind of version.
Cool.
I like they kind of styled it the same way that the Beatles have it. So they shrank the actual artwork and then put like a strip down the side with like a little branding for, and then it just kind of opens up like a digipack. So do you have that version too?
I do not. No, I don't have that 40th anniversary version. So that's very cool.
And I'm still waiting to find a copy of the 50th anniversary version.
Yeah, well, it's I got it on Amazon. I don't know if you can get it that way, but I don't know how many stores are carrying it, but I showed it on an episode that I did yesterday, and I'll show it again here in a minute. Do you have it on vinyl?
I do, yeah. I
Oh
don't
yeah,
have.
you just showed that one. I'm sorry. I meant the
Yep.
there's been a remaster since then, which I do not have. That's the only one that I've got as part of that box set. But I know they did remasters of the Doors on vinyl. I don't know, maybe about 5 years ago or something like that. And I don't have that version. Or if they did a 40th vinyl release, I don't have that version either. What I've got is this is that now I think the original was die cut. The original pressing was die cut. So when you
Okay.
put this out, like it had the picture of the Doors, like right here. This is not that, but it is on the
Oh yeah.
label there with the butterfly. And then I've got another repress where it doesn't have kind of like the curved corners on it. It's just a regular square. It does not have a customized inner sleeve, but
Okay.
that's what that looks like. But I don't know. I've got the 50th anniversary remaster. I'd like to get the one with the die cut just to have it, but
Yeah.
I have that right now. And then this was the box set. This is the 50th anniversary box set, which I talked about. And actually when I did the video, I didn't think the booklet was part of this, but as it turns out, I was able to find that. It was kind of tucked in the little,
Yep.
like the sleeve there. And I'll show it now since I didn't show it in my other video because I didn't know it existed, but looks like that. And you've got some cool photographs and notes about the session and whatnot. Kind of a little bit of an essay there, which is very cool. And then that's the cassette.
Oh, okay.
And this was the first format I actually owned it on before I
Oh, wow. Yeah.
vinyl and CD there. And then this is the CD version that I've got. This is, I'm not sure what year it's from, but it was, I think, the first time they remastered the Doors catalog. So it's not the original CD issue. It's like the remastered series that they did as a second pressing of that. So, and then I've got the remix, which is part of this Doors collection here. And then the disc itself.
Wow, you have lots of versions.
Yeah, I mean, you don't, until you decide to make a video like this, you kind of don't really realize like how much you've got. But so anyway, that's our respective collections. We're going to do the song ranking now. So we will start at number 10. What was your, and I got to qualify this by saying I love every song on this album. So it's not like worst to best. There is no worst. It's just in terms of my, our least favorite what is your least favorite track on LA Woman?
Okay. Well, so there's 10 tracks. So my number 10 is Cars Hiss by My Window. So what you're going to find in my ranking, not to spoil anything too much, but I never really considered the Doors to be like, I thought they were a little bit better than a standard kind of blues band, which of course their music, you don't really think of them as a blues band, but there's quite a few traditional kind of blues songs on this record. And that's in general the stuff that's not really my favorite compared to the other tracks. Although again, like you, I don't really dislike anything on this album. So I find Cars Hiss by My Window. It's 4 minutes of really that doesn't really go anywhere. And I know that so the Doors had been having all their albums produced by Paul Rothchild at this point. They ended up switching gears when Paul left and brought in Bruce Botnick. And I know there's been talk about, well, he didn't like this song or he didn't like that song. And to me, it kind of sounds like he said he was kind of bored in the studio. And these are some of the songs that I kind of think of, like, that I don't enjoy as much, that I get a little bored with. But
Yeah, yeah. Well, the Doors had done Backdoor Man. There was some somewhat bluesy stuff on their first album, but it was really more psychedelic. It didn't sound like a John Lee Hooker or a Muddy Waters or anything like that, or a Jimmy Reed. But that for the Soft Parade album, I think because they had kind of taken some heat over that, adding some horns and some jazz elements, that they kind of went in the opposite direction with Morrison Hotel. And that's where you got like songs like Maggie McGill and, you know, some of the bluesier stuff that you find on that album. And then I think that was the direction they continued to want to pursue with LA Woman. And so that's why you got so many blues tracks on here. But yeah, Cars Hiss by My Window, I can see that. It's just kind of a very, I don't know, there's not like a whole lot going on. Like you say, it's just kind of like a basic blues guitar riff there. And I think that's one of the mixes where there might be some addition to like an extra verse or something like that. Yeah. So it's a little bit longer in the remixed version, but
What was your number 10?
My number 10 is going to be Hyacinth House. And again, not that I don't like it. It's just, I mean, not the song that I kind of gravitate to right away on this album. I think it's fine. You know, it's kind of nestled there, the number 2 song on side 2. It's, you know, it's just okay. You know, my favorite line on there is, I see the bathroom is clear. And so I just read that apparently where the studio was at, it was a smaller area and there was a bathroom like right off of the control room floor or whatever. It was right near the vocal booth, and Jim just kind of improvised that line on the spot. Because I always wondered, like, that's such a random thing to throw into that song. But anyway, you know.
My number 9 is another blues song. This one actually goes back apparently to the 1920s, sort of Delta blues song. Of course, the Doors did their own spin on it. My number 9 is Crawling King Snake. So I went back and actually tried to find some of those versions from, I don't know if it was John Lee Hooker that did a fairly familiar version of this. And I tried to find like the 1920s version. And the Doors did significantly change the intro riff from the traditional version. Of course, anytime you have John Densmore's drumming, like the punch that he adds to it and all those keyboard stabs that Ray Manzarek adds to the song. So that elevates it to a Doors kind of blues song. So I do like this one a bit better than Cars Hiss by My Window.
Sure.
I actually find that the riff on this song, it starts out a little bit like a slower version of Wild Child that goes dun 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 dun. It sort of sounds like that a little bit. Of course, Wild Child is from the Soft Parade, but again, I don't find this song nearly as exciting as Wild Child or some of the other tracks.
When I think the intro too, it's sort of a similar intro, and I think it's one that they've used also on Backdoor Man a little bit, the start of that too, where you just kind of got that thing there. But Yeah, and you don't hear an electric piano on many blues tracks except for
Yeah.
the Doors do, which I think is kind of cool. It definitely gives it that Doors flavor as well. My number 9 is Cars Hiss by My Window. So we weren't, weren't too far off on that one. So yeah, I mean, I kind of already talked about that, but yeah, it's just, it's fine, but it just, if you're going to consider any track to be filler, I think, Cars Hiss might be one you would categorize that way.
Yep. My number 8 is the final sort of last blues. Well, this is a blues stomper, so it's probably my favorite of the blues tunes. Number 8 is Been Down So Long. It's actually the third track on the album. Well, I've been down so goddamn long that it looks like up to me. So clearly, Jim is talking about all the trials and tribulations that he's been through in the court and that sort of thing. I kind of wish, the only other note I wrote down about this song, I kind of wish they'd sort of, instead of giving us 3 of these blues songs that I don't love as much, maybe merge them in a way somehow and into one sort of epic blues song and taking kind of the best bits of each one. But yeah, my number 8 has Been Down So Long.
All right. Yeah, no, a lot of blues. And I think, Jim was very enthusiastic during this album, whereas I think before he could be very kind of, I guess not very excited when it came to recording his vocals and getting into the studio. Sometimes he would be late, sometimes he'd be drunk, sometimes you never knew what you were going to get from Jim Morrison. When he would show up to the studio, he could be kind of indifferent, I think, sometimes to the material that they were recording. But, from what I was reading in that booklet that I found as part of the 50th edition, he was very excited about this album. He wanted to do a blues record. He was enthusing to all his friends that I finally get to do a blues record. And, it was right around the same time, I think he was just recovering from the whole Miami debacle and the indecency trial that he was going through. And he was trying to shed that sex symbol image. He'd grown the beard. He was concentrating more on his poetry. He'd gained some weight. He wanted to, he was singing in a lower register, a much gruffer register than he had sung. I mean, up until Soft Parade, you didn't hear Jim Morrison sing like that. Soft Parade was kind of the end of a vocal era a little bit for Jim Morrison. His voice got a little huskier, starting with Morrison Hotel, and then it's full on husky with the L.A. Woman tracks. I think L'America is the only vocal he does where it sounds like something that could have come from the first 4 albums. Every other track, he's just got this gruffness and, kind of harsher or a little more masculine, I guess, if you want to say, kind of tone to his vocals. But
totally agree.
Yeah. Speaking of L'America, that is going to be my number 8.
Oh, okay.
Again, I like it. I know I've got it ranked low. I love the song. I think it's a great start to side 2. It kind of cleanses your palate after L.A. Woman, the last track on side 1. Got a little bit of psychedelic elements to it. Ray Manzarek's got some kind of creepy keyboards in the beginning there. You got that great kind of the riff from Robbie Krieger that's dern, 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 that just kind of deep, that it's almost like a very bassy guitar lick that he's got in that particular track. I think Jim sings it great. But yeah, I think it could have fit right at home on any of their first 4 albums. But
for sure.
Yeah, I got it ranked number 8.
Okay, my number 7 is the second track on side 2, which you've already talked about, Hyacinth House. The opening strummed chords of the song kind of remind me a little bit of Led Zeppelin. So we're talking about 1971. I don't know if maybe a little bit of that Zeppelin influence is coming in from their 4th album. I do really like the melodic bass line on this song, though I find Jim sounds a little bored. Although his voice is kind of dry at the beginning, then it's like they doubled his voice in the studio to give it a little bit more interest. I found this version on CD, The Doors Essential Rarities, And track 4 on here is like a demo version from, so Hyacinth House demo recorded at Robbie Krieger's home studio in 1969. So that would be like a few years before the album came out. My only other note about this song is I felt like this song is the one on the album that had the most wasted potential. If Jim didn't sound quite so bored, and I mean, I think the riff, and if they just taken the tempo and sped it up a little bit, I thought it would have been a little bit more interesting song. But that's my number 7.
Yeah, I agree. He doesn't really give it a whole lot of gusto on it. And I don't know if it's like, oh, can we do another blues number? And I know Jim wrote the song, so it's kind of odd to me that he wouldn't have more enthusiasm for it. I don't know if it was tired. I don't know when it was recorded, if it was at the end of a long session or something like that. I don't know, but yeah, I agree. It does sound that way. My number 7 is going to be Been Down So Long. Like you say, the most up-tempo blues track, if we're not counting L.A. Woman. But yeah, I think, I love Right Where It Comes after you've had Robbie Krieger's Love Her Madly, which is kind of I don't know if I'd call it necessarily a ballad, but, it's kind of a rollicking sort of song. And then to change the mood very abruptly, you've got Jim Morrison. It's just totally Jim to open that track. Well, I've been down, and then the band comes in and it's like, yeah, kick ass. Jim does that, yeah, just so well, and his voice sounds so strong, and you can tell he's just selling it throughout that whole track. And I love that fat bass. That's one of the things I really love. It's not Ray Manzarek doing the bass like you would sometimes do live. I mean, they actually have a bass player plays on these tracks, and they mic it up. And I love the fat bass sound that you get, which is different from any other Doors album. That's what I love, I think, about a lot of these tracks, and that one in particular.
Awesome. Moving on to number 6, you've already talked about this one. My number 6 is the first song on side 2. That's L'America, or stretched out, it's Latin America. So I guess Jim was inspired on a trip he took to Latin America. Now, what I find kind of interesting is I think of the song Latin America, and then I think of John Densmore. It was always playing around with and experimenting with sort of Latin beats. So you're thinking, okay, great, Latin America, Element America, it's going to have this kind of Latin flavor to it. No, not at all. Actually, this song sounds more like a Black Sabbath riff kind of song than like any kind of Latin beat that the Doors would have done before, which I thought was kind of interesting because Sabbath's debut happened just like 1 year earlier. So maybe they were taking a little bit of inspiration from Black Sabbath. I'm not sure, but it's got this 40-second kind of ominous intro with the riff, and it's getting a little faster and a little faster. And it's got some guitar slides and some really like, so kind of army-ish like marching drums. And I did actually look into this song was apparently possibly going to be on a movie by Michelangelo Antonio, a movie he put out in 1970 called Zabriskie Point.
Oh,
and
yeah, Pink Floyd had some tracks on that one.
Oh, that's right, yeah. So anyway, that was my number 6, L'America.
Yeah, one of the things that I didn't mention on L'America, which I just thought of now, is my favorite line, well, not favorite line, but it kind of brings a smile to my face where he sings, change your look, and then out expect like, knowing Jim, like, that 4-letter word was on his mind, like he had that rhyme there, but then he was find yourself. Kind of an amusing part to that track. My number 6 is going to be Crawling King Snake. Like it, I love, like I say, the electric piano on there. It gives it a Doors flavor for sure. I think Robbie Krieger's got a very cool solo. You've got that interplay between Jim and Robbie and the rest of the band, and he's kind of calling out, and just a fun blues track. My favorite blues track on the album, but it's still not in my top 5. But
Yeah, we're halfway there, and it looks like our bottom five is pretty much the same, just a little switched around. And it looks like our
yeah,
top gonna be the same thing, just a few songs in a different order. So
yeah.
moving right to number five, my number five is The Wasp, Texas Radio and the Big Beat. I want to tell you about Texas Radio and the Big Beat. So first time I ever heard that again was that on that in concert live show that came out in 1991. But on that version, they actually only did like a short 1 minute 53-second version of it. I love some of the lyrics in this song. So this song, I understand it came from some of Jim's poetry, maybe from his journals, and they kind of turned it into a song. I love the friends I have gathered together on this thin raft. We have constructed pyramids in honor of our escaping. This is the land where the pharaoh died. Out here on the perimeter, there are no stars. Out here, we is stoned immaculate. I wanted to read that actually, just because I picked up this collection called Stoned Immaculate. It's got some really interesting Doors covers. What year did this come out? 2000 actually. And one of the interesting things about this, of course, back then you still had three existing members of the Doors, and they play on some of these songs. I think they actually did a version of, oh man, they play on a few of these songs with some sort of contemporary artists of the day. So it's not often that you get a covers album about a band where the actual band plays on the album. So
Yeah,
that's my number.
well, that's my number five also. Which just speaks to how strong our top four are, I guess. But yeah, that Jim actually, that was just kind of a piece of poetry that he would recite on the 1968 tour. I've got a video, it's called The Doors Europe 1968, and he performs that. It doesn't have the backing like the version on L.A. Woman does. It's just kind of got some keyboard fills from Ray Manzarek on it, but it's just got like a bit of poetry that he would recite. And then they gave it like the full workout, band workout on this album, which, yeah, I think I love it. And I love how Jim's voice has a lot of reverb and echo on it. It sounds like he's in like a tunnel or something. It's just a very cool, and it sounds again so husky the way he's singing. I want to tell you about Texas Radio and the Big B. I can't do it, but you know, and it's just got such power to his voice when he does that. And yeah, and I love, you know, Ray Manzarek's keyboard is very cool. You got, you know, kind of a strident kind of a drumming from John Densmore, and Robbie Krieger obviously is great on that track. But yeah, I guess that's kind of a blues. You could kind of call that a blues track, I guess. But yeah, I like the 68 version, and I like this version even more.
Cool. My number four, I believe, is actually the first single that they released. It's Lover Madly, which I find is to be probably the most upbeat song on the album. And right away, you've got Jerry Sheff on bass, who I believe was Elvis's bass player for 8 years, like from 1969 to 1977. So Lover Madly, it's a number 3 hit in Canada, number 11 on the US Billboard charts. And we've got Robbie Krieger playing with his 12-string guitar on this song. And actually now just reading back through my notes on that Stoned Immaculate CD that I had mentioned earlier, you've got the original members of the Doors with Bo Diddley doing a version of Lover Madly.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
I'll have to check that one out. Lover Madly is great. I love the tack piano also that Ray Manzarek plays. I think that ends kind of like a room feel to it or whatever. It's just very cool. My number 4 is also Love for Madly.
Okay.
I'm not playing this out. This is not you know, a conspiracy by any means, but yeah, I love that track. And you know, Robbie Krieger, for as great a guitarist as he was also a very gifted songwriter. Some of my favorite Doors tracks are Robbie Krieger compositions dating all the way back to Light My Fire. But, you know, he wrote Touch Me, which I think people don't realize. People who are just kind of casual Doors fans, because they know Jim's a poet and he was their front man and he was kind of like the icon of the Doors, just assume that Jim Morrison wrote all of their material, which is not true. Robbie Krieger was a great songwriter in his own right. And this just goes to show what a great songwriter he was, and very cool.
All right, my number 3 is the opening track on LA Woman, The Changeling. I've actually I showed you this CD earlier. This is the 40th anniversary version. And just going back and re-listening to this stuff, I noticed that there's a demo version of The Changeling on here. And it's got they add a little bit of studio chatter at the beginning. It's got Jim kind of pipes in. I don't want to spook anybody, but this is my favorite number. And then they kick into the song. So that's Jim. He seemed to be in quite a happy mood for that song. I really like The Changeling because like at about 2:45 minutes into the song, so it's felt like not a fairly standard Doors song, but a really cool song. But at 2:45 for me, it goes a little bit proggy. It's almost like a deep purpley thing with that kind of pitch shifted keyboard stuff. And then it doubles the keyboard stuff. So you've got this keyboard, then more keyboards on top of that. I'm sort of wondering at this point, are they going to turn into Yes? And then just as soon as I get that thought, it kind of stops and it goes back into a more traditional kind of Doors song. And just one more thing, I'm going to slightly ruin this song for you. The riff kind of goes. Now, picture that riff and think of, won't you take me to funky town?
Totally. That would be, how has somebody not done a mashup of those two tracks?
Yeah.
Somebody get to work on it, somebody who knows about that kind of thing. But yeah, no, that's very cool. And I just love, it's such a funky groove that they establish in that song. It's a great song. Like if you're going to go for a long drive, put that CD in as you're barreling down the highway, starting with track 1. It's just so phenomenal. And I love the bass work on it. Ray Manzarek with, like you say, the is so cool. And then Jim comes in on the vocals, I live uptown, and then just cool. Yeah, how can you not love that? I mean, on some days that might be my favorite track on here, but
yeah,
just phenomenal. It is my number 3 as well. I can't help it. I love it. It gets you so excited for the album because it really tells you what the album's going to be like going forward, and everything is right there on display. I like that guitar solo also.
Yeah.
Be Krieger at the end.
He does have such a distinct sound too.
Yeah, he sounds like Richie Blackmore. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, very cool. All right, well, I guess we'll see what our 1 and 2 are if we're the same on those as well. What's your number 2?
Oh man, I was back and forth on this, but so my number 2 is the title track from LA Woman. LA Woman. I don't know. I think it must have been again on this reissued version I have. When I played the song earlier, it's got this kind of weird. It's the riff from God Save the Queen. They play at the beginning of the song. I was like, I don't remember ever hearing that before, but and it's kind of in this weird out of tune thing. Is that sort of like a bonus version of the song, or is that on the actual? I haven't listened to the vinyl in a while, but
it's not on the vinyl.
I was like, what? Anyway,
yeah, because it's so unfamiliar. It's like, wait a minute, that's not how. That's I think how it originally started, and they edited that out when they cut it on the proper.
Just a few things I wanted to say about LA Woman. Of course, again on the Stoned Immaculate CD. I don't know if you've ever heard of the band Days of the New, and Travis Meeks is kind of the leader of that band. He does a fantastic version, totally upbeat version of LA Woman on here. And of course, the Doors performed way back in, I want to say, back in 2001. They put out this Storytellers kind of, it's sort of like their version of MTV Unplugged, where they go on and talk about their songs. And, the band played with all these other singers. The first song that it kicks right off with, so this is like a live studio taping. You've got Perry Farrell from Jane's Addiction doing his version of L.A. Woman. They don't change it in any way, but he does a really terrific version. And just one more thing I wanted to say about L.A. Woman. We talked about the movie, the Oliver Stone movie. So originally, Billy Idol was tapped to play Jim Morrison in that movie. And of course, I think he got into a car accident. He eventually put out this album, Charmed Life, which is actually, I wouldn't really consider myself to be an expert on Billy Idol's music. I'm not like a huge fan, but I really love this album. And it's got L.A. Woman on it on side one. So, and I
thought he did a version of that.
Yeah, I love Billy's version of L.A. Woman too. So yeah, that's my number two.
Well, you had mentioned Perry Farrell. I think he was a big Doors fan because he's also on the Doors classic albums. The VH did an installment of their classic album series for the Doors debut album, and he was interviewed on there, as well as also. There's a couple other people. Henry Rollins is interviewed as well. He was in the band Black Flag, obviously, but. So Jim Morrison's influence, really, you can see in a lot of, Billy Idol obviously was very influenced, Echo and the Bunnymen, Perry Farrell, some Black Flag influences, I imagine, although I'm not as familiar with their work as the other bands, but.
Yeah, a lot of people talk about Michael Hutchence a little bit from NXS too, being in.
Right.
By Jim Morrison. So
yeah, Michael Hutchence, he could have played Jim Morrison very easily as well, even though he's Australian, but nonetheless.
So what's your number two? Are we going to line up or?
We are.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, L.A. Woman. The Mr. Mojo Rising was actually an anagram of Jim Morrison, which I forget who, somebody. I know who it was. It was from the Love and Spoonful. John
Sebastian? Yeah.
Yeah, he showed Jim that anagram, and Jim incorporated that into the song. But another great road driving song. It just, you build that momentum, almost like a motorcycle starting or something. That and then you got the drums coming in, then you got Ray Manzarek, like each band member, starts to come in on that. And then it's just a great riff, great Jim Morrison vocal. I love at the end how it breaks down. And then you got Jim Morrison who goes into the whole Mr. Mojo Rising, and then it just kind of starts slow, and then it builds and builds. Mr. Mojo Rising, Mr. Mojo Rising.
Rising.
Yeah, and then it just like takes off again. I mean, that's the beauty of it. It starts off full force, slows down, then it builds again. I mean, those are some of my favorite songs, the ones that do that. But they do it so successfully. Like you, this next week might be my number one song. It's just so hard. I mean, they're really neck and neck. Obviously, our number one is Riders on the Storm. No surprise there. Ooh, look at you, Record Store Day, 7-inch.
Yeah. So early on in Record Store Day, this is from quite a few years ago now, 2011, I guess, so 10 years ago. I remember attending a lot of Record Store Days. I always used to take trips to the US. I won't talk about this too much, other than I could always count on going to Record Store Day, and some of the, it wasn't the smaller bands, it was all the really larger bands like Ozzy Osbourne. I could always get something from the Beach Boys, and I could always expect to get something from the Doors. And here they kind of re-released, this is sort of they inverted the cover on the original single. It's sort of like their image is like posterized and inverted, looks really strange, but they've kind of restored the original photo for this version. Although it doesn't have any of the B-sides, it's just got Riders on the Storm on both versions. It's got like a mono and a stereo version of the song. So what can I say about Riders on the Storm, though? It was a number 5 single in Canada, number 14 in the USA. And Actually, if anyone's interested, just a few days ago of recording on December 3rd, the Doors had released a new video for Riders on the Storm. It kind of looks like a Rodriguez kind of thing, if you've ever seen like Sin City or Planet Terror, any kind of movies like that. So it's got kind of that feel to it.
Very cool.
The last thing
that when I was just looking at you talk about the that single cover, I don't think this is a group photograph. I think these are individual portraits that they just kind of stuck together as a composite, because I've got this book and it shows like the separate photographs like these. I don't think this was a group picture. I think he took individual portraits of each of the band members and they just kind of squeezed them together.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Shot. But
you know, the actual cover of this, I've never really loved the cover for LA Woman. Well, first of all, it doesn't say The Doors, it's just Doors. And I found the kind of color scheme a little bit jarring, but one thing that I've realized, so of course, when this came out, it was all about vinyl. So the printing and stuff was quite large on it, although the spacing on the letters at the bottom, the LA and the WOM part is fine, but then we call it the kerning on the letters A and N, how they're like really far separated from everything else. It always just bugged the crap out of me. But anyway, what I was going to say is now in the era of everybody's listening to music on their phones and playing on streaming, this album cover still works really well, even when it's really, really tiny. It's a really solid image. So
yeah, they were ahead of their time that way, I guess. The advent of cassettes and smaller CD formats. But yeah, I wish they would have used the Doors logo also, the traditional Doors font that they used on their other albums, with the exception of Morrison Hotel. But yeah, they just kind of wanted to do something a little different, I guess. But
it's got the same kind of font that the Beach Boys used on Pet Sounds.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever that font is called.
Yeah, it's called Cooper Black.
Okay. Very cool. Well, yeah, Riders of the Storm. I love the thunder and rain sound effects that you get on there. I love the keyboard. I love the bass. Everything about it, the vocal, there's a killer on the road, sort of like if anybody's a Rolling Stones fan, it's kind of almost the same imagery that the Rolling Stones use on Midnight Rambler. These songs always struck me as kind of similar, but yeah, it's just a great way to bring down the album. It's quiet, but it's not boring. It's just got a very cool groove there. And what a great way to kind of close the curtain on the Doors career with Jim Morrison. It's sort of like, I was thinking the other day about great bands who went out like in peak form. And I know the Doors recorded a pair of albums after Jim Morrison passed away. I don't really count those in the Doors canon, although I know they exist. But for me, the Doors went out on top. The Doors went out on what may be their best album. And I think it's great. I obviously, Jim didn't know this was going to be their last album, but I was reading that they had made the decision right around the time of those recording sessions. They were not going to tour. They're going to take a break from touring. It had just been too exhausting. It kind of exacerbated a lot of substance abuse issues that Jim Morrison was having. Jim was planning on going to Paris and kind of take a little bit of a break. Obviously, he never came back from Paris, but it's always interested me, what would the Doors have sounded like for the rest of the 70s? Some of the elements from their two albums as a trio kind of pointed in that direction, but
yeah, and then I just remembered actually today, when we're filming this, December 8th, would have been Jim Morrison's 78th birthday.
Wow.
1943.
Yeah, well, if he's out there somewhere, which, the end of the book, No One Here Gets Out Alive, sort of leaves that open. Like, wow, there are some people who think he might have faked his own death, but I think we know that's not very likely to have happened. That would have required a monumental conspiracy. But Nonetheless, the Doors left us with 6 perfect albums, in my opinion. A live album that is somewhat mediocre. They've since released a lot of more impressive live albums in the past decade, thankfully. But yeah, great album. I don't know if it's my favorite. It comes very close. I know it's at least number 2.
Okay, yeah, I would say probably ranked either 2 or 3 for me as well. So I find that first album hard to beat.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, they're bookended. They're, the bookends of their discography are really flawless. Did they ever do a classic album episode VH1 for L.A. Woman?
No, not that I know of, but really they should. Although there is something similar to that. The Doors had produced, I guess, maybe their own documentary. It's called Mr. Mojo Rising, the kind of the making of L.A. Woman. I've been trying to find a copy of that. Apparently, it's really easy to find on DVD, but the Blu-rays are a little bit scarce. So you can check it out. I found it on YouTube, but that's a really cool documentary if you want to check that out.
Yeah, I've not seen that, but I'll have to be on the lookout for it. Well, cool. Well, thank you, Matt, again for participating. I had a great time. It's always fun talking about the Doors. It's fun talking about the Beach Boys too. But
Yeah.
we'll I'm sure be doing this again sometime soon. Check Matt out also on Tim Derling's channel, Tim's Vinyl Confessions. Matt is you guys actually just did a video on Great White.
Yeah, that was really fun.
Yeah, so make sure you check that out on Tim's channel. They show their Great White collections. And it's kind of I didn't realize they had that many albums. I know of Great White, but I have to admit I learned a lot in that video, saw a lot. I didn't realize it was part of their discography. So very cool. Thanks, Matt. Thanks everybody for watching, and have a great day.